Welcome everyone to another episode of Follow the Light Music Review. My name is John DeLaurentis, and today, on the fourth episode of Interviews, I have the privilege of welcoming to the channel Rob Perez. Rob Perez is a guitarist and multi-instrumentalist hailing from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, known for his work with the progressive rock bands Fall of Echoes and Visual Cliff, both of which featured Orphan Prophets vocalist Shane Lankford. Visual Cliff's third album, Freedom Within, was recently reissued in a 20th year edition on vinyl and CD. He's also part of the progressive rock band EchoVerse, who released the critically acclaimed album Whispers Between Worlds in 2024, and who are currently working on their second album. Rob Perez has also released music under his own name and with M.A.P and Exit Strategy, and most recently with Shockwire Saints, whose debut EP was released this year. So welcome to the channel, Rob.
Thanks, man. All of that makes me sound pretty old. It's been a run.
You have a varied and long musical history there. So
Praising God for that, for sure.
yeah, definitely. So let's start at the beginning. What first got you into music?
A lot of guitar players are going to be like, "Yeah, I get it, dude." I saw a commercial when I was 10 years old um, for the Kiss show that was coming through Pittsburgh, and the part of the commercial obviously cut to Ace Frehley's guitar smoking and blowing up
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. And then as soon as I saw that commercial, I immediately ran to my parents and go, buy me a guitar. I want to play guitar. And that's kind of where it all started. So I gotta give props to Ace for getting me into it at least.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people like kind of dismiss them, but they are the influence behind a lot of musicians. I remember me and my brother had heard about them when they first came out in the 1970s, and we bought their first album in 1974, I think it was, just on the hype around it. And then we actually got to see them in Wildwood Convention Center at the very like I think it was 1975. Uh, it was like not a very big venue, but they still did all of their, pyrotechnics and stuff of that nature. So yeah,
Yeah,
the influenced a lot.
unfortunately, I didn't get to go see them in the heyday of their 70s when I was young because my mother was like, "You're not going to go see them." She thought not as highly of them at that time as I did, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was fortunate. My brother had taken me because I think I was only like 12 years old at the time, so I don't
Mhm.
remember it as vividly. Uh, but I do remember they blew off bombs, and I think they burned the ceiling like from smoke bombs because of the thing. So it was very
Yeah,
interesting.
me and my younger brother kind of redeemed ourselves in I think it was what 95 in their first all original reunion tour with the makeup and the whole
Yeah,
deal. We went to that show together. Mom couldn't stop us then, so
at that point, yeah, I never saw them again until their final tour, their end of the road tour. Like I went, my brother again. We went. I think it was in Atlantic City, and it was the end of the tour. Of course, it was not. Ace and Peter Chris went there, but it was
right. Yeah,
kind
so
of.
that was the humble beginning of it all, and then eventually morphed into the Eddie Van Halen stuff, and I'll never forget going to my neighbor's house, and he was like, "Hey, Rob, you play guitar. Listen to this," and he drops the needle down on Eruption, and I was just like, "What is that?" And
Yeah,
so that kind of that went next level, and then I went into the whole Zeppelin and Clapton and eventually Steve Morse and Al Di Meola and Jeff Beck and all those guys were what I cut my teeth on through high school.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Beck and Demiola, really phenomenal guitar players, like
Yeah,
next
I
level.
can't I can't get those guys out of my DNA of my playing. It's just it's there forever, no matter how hard I
Yeah,
try to remove it. So I've just accepted it.
yeah. Well, I mean, Blow by Blow is probably still to this day one of my all-time favorite albums. Never
Yeah,
get
yeah.
tired of listening
I've
to it.
got I got every record he's ever put out. It's constant spinning them.
Yeah, awesome. So when did you start playing guitar?
Fifth grade. Yep. Uh, had a cheapie. Parents wanted to make sure I was really into it. And then when they realized I was never coming out of my bedroom after dinner time, they're like, let's get him a better one. So that's when it started, and took lessons for probably about the first 2 years, and then just realized I had an ear for it, and I could just sit down and listen to a record and kind of know how to play it. So it just kind of took off from there.
Now, how did you get into the other instruments that you play or yeah that you do like
That
on
was
your
the drums. I mean, I'm Cal and EchoVerse is gonna laugh, but I'm just a boom tap boom guy. I mean, when I was living in New York City, late '80s, moved there to play the clubs and do the whole thing. In my late teens, early 20s, I had a guy that I worked with. That had like an acoustic rock kind of a thing, and he was trying to find a drummer. And I worked with him. We were talking all the time about him wanting to put a band together. And he's like, I can't find a drummer, anybody that's reliable, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I'll play drums for you. And then I've never played drums ever. And so he's like, all right, when do you want to start rehearsing? I'm like, give me, I got some things to do. I was making up all kinds of stuff. I got some things to do. Give me like 2 or 3 weeks and then we'll get together. Well, in those 2 or 3 weeks, I would take a subway down to Chinatown and
Mhm.
rent a studio that had a full drum set and PA system and all that. So that's what they did. A lot of restaurants had their stuff decked out underneath their establishments for bands to come in and just rent the room out and rehearse.
Right.
So for 3 weeks, I had my little Walkman tapped into the PA, and I'm teaching myself how to play drums good enough to be in this guy's band. And that's how I started playing drums. So
Yeah.
it added another gig or two a week of making money during that time for me, and and I just took to it. I had a
Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
natural ability for it. But like I said, I'm just a good boom tap boom guy. I'm not going to throw any Neil Peart or Portnoy at you.
How about the keyboards? You play a little bit of keyboards too, don't you?
That I no, I don't want to disrespect even the worst keyboard player on the planet that might listen to this. I literally find the notes and kind of know where to go
Yeah. Yeah.
to add some things, some color to the stuff that I've done where I've done the keyboards, just fill in work, but that's pretty much it on that end.
Okay. So we did talk about some of your musical influences. Is there any other ones like later on? Like those are the ones we talked about, the ones in the beginning that influenced you. How about later on or maybe currently?
Uh, Currently, I mean, Ty Tabors of the world, obviously, Dream Theater, all the new progressive stuff that's out there. They all have elements of things that their guitar players are doing that just you know knock my socks off. But I tend to stick to what's in my DNA, because
Yeah.
that's what kind of built who I am. And I listen to everybody for appreciation's sake and not duplication's sake.
Right. Right.
Because I kind of dig the voice I've developed over the years, that I think is kind of recognizable to me, and that all comes from that, those building blocks of the DNA from my first 10 years of playing.
Right. Right.
I
Awesome.
mean, I listen to everything. I mean, if you
Yeah.
saw, if I let you scan the room here on the video, you'll see 1,500 vinyl records and everything from Miles Davis to, I mean, you know, uh, progressive stuff, Beach Boys. I mean, I listen to so much music. It's not even funny. There's something I
Yeah.
glean from all of it, that finds its way through, my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how I am too. I like all genres of music. I can go from one to the other. Although I do have a particular affinity toward progressive rock. I always was into like Kansas growing up and
Oh yeah,
yes,
Terry
all
Livgren's
that.
a big
Yeah.
influence for me as well.
Yeah, just fantastic. Um, so let's talk about your journey toward faith in Jesus Christ.
Very happy to. When did it start? Well, I
Yeah,
grew up. I grew up in the church. Parents were believers, so but they weren't heavy-handed about it. They kind of let me journey through things and ask questions as I, kind of grew up with it. I can remember the exact day and time that I had enough wherewithal as a young person to say, I need that, I want that, and I want to follow that. And it was, I was probably about 11 years old, and I'm home by myself. I think my parents were out, with my brother somewhere. He had something to do, ball game or something, and I didn't go. So I hung back and was just kind of channel surfing at the house, and I came across a Billy Graham thing that was on TV, and he was doing the whole preaching thing, and then he did the call. And when that call hit, 11-year-old me dropped to my knees in front of that TV and accepted Christ. And then when they came home, I had a conversation about what I experienced, and I said I want to be baptized. And we were attending a Baptist church locally, and and then just from there on out, it was I was all about it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's Billy Graham, what an influence he had on so many people. It made me think of well, Mark Varner of Grand Funk Railroad, which was another band I grew up really getting into. But
Oh yeah.
he when he shared his testimony, he said it was at 9 years old. It was in front of Billy Graham. He did the kind of the same thing, got down on his knees and accepted Christ early on. So
Yeah, and it
especially
wasn't kind of funny enough. It wasn't until just a few years ago. Me and my mother were out for a lunch date together and hanging out and talking, and I kind of brought that up. And
yeah.
she told me that's exactly how she came to the Lord. It was,
Wow.
she was watching a Billy Graham show, and I'm like, why didn't you tell? She's like, I don't know why I didn't, or I might have, and you forgot. I don't know, but that's how she came to the Lord. Same type of situation. So I thought that
Wow.
was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Um, so let's talk about how what is your process for composing songs? So is there a certain way you approach it, or do you approach? I know you've done both instrumental and lyrical music as well. Um, how do you approach that songwriting process?
It's pretty much a cocooning in my music studio. And just letting it go, and letting kind of the Holy Spirit kind of speak. I've told people this a couple of times and they don't believe me, but it's very true. Uh, I really don't know where it comes from. I don't sit down and I'm not intentional about it. It's I just kind of open the antennas and stuff comes in, and some of it is I sit back, and after I've like kind of recorded the guitar tracks, I just sit back and go, how did I think of that? Where did that come from?
Yeah,
Again, it wasn't very intentional. There's other times where I have a very specific riff that kind of I'm singing in my head, and then I'll sit down and try to map it out a little bit and kind of say, okay, this is where that is. I mean, even though I took lessons for a couple of years, I never learned how to read music. So, I
right.
mean, everything is through just ear and knowing patterns and scales and modes and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot that I do that I mean, in Visual Cliff, the guy, Rick was in the band with me. He was a Berkeley cat, and I would throw guitar tracks at him to work up bass and drums, and he would just sit there and go, that shouldn't go together. He's like, how did
Yeah,
you think of like kind of going this? I'm like, I don't know. It just happened, and he's like, but it works and it's cool. And so he once he kind of got over with us working together over a few years, he quit being the Berkeley guy where it's like, oh, that doesn't match up with that. That's got to be in this guy. I mean, he was so clinical about it because that's just how they're trained.
right.
He was just like, dude, you do what you do, man. It's coming out better than I would have even thought of or whatever. So it's
Yeah,
it's a crazy process like that. And the thing that people don't believe is once a song is finished, all the guitar tracks, bass, drums, then I kind of go to that's now we're heading into my favorite part of the process, because that's when I sit back and all right, this section is where the guitar solo is going to be, and I truly have no idea what I'm going to play. I have no clue. I don't even have a sketch. I just start improvising and I just start going.
right,
And
right.
a lot of times, it's one of those things. You ever like drive somewhere and you've driven it so many times
Hmm.
You're like, I don't even remember making these turns because you've done it so many times. I just do it
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in
yeah.
like a sleep mode almost. And that's kind of what happens with me during the soloing process. It's like literally the Holy Spirit's just it's just like my private conversation. And those notes are like my language with the Lord that only I understand. And a lot of the guitar solos, once they're done and tracked, I mean, I may go back and fix one part of it or something to come up with something different or a little bit better or more refined. But largely, most of my guitar solos are improvised. And if I'm more than 3 weeks out from recording them, I can't recall them as to how I played them.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well, it's
don't,
that
I'm like, I got to sit there and figure it out.
figure it out. Yeah, it's that creative spirit the Lord has given you. You know, that you
And
tap
it's yeah,
into.
and it's a moment where I'm in a bubble and I don't notice anything. And my
Yeah.
wife will tell you, there's a many a times recording where you know I come into this studio at like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. and it just felt like 15 minutes went by and she's like knocking on the door quietly. She's like, "You ready for supper or you want something to eat?" I was like, "What time is it?" And I was like, "Holy moly, it's 6, 7 o'clock at night already." Um, and I don't even notice the time that went by. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful process. I love it. It's why I can't ever not do it. Because I feel like I would feel like I'm stopping the conversation with the Lord, through that end of my life. So
Yeah.
those are valued, very spirit-filled moments.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in the flow at that moment, and you just
Very
sync with
much
it.
so.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about the formation of the bands Fall of Echoes and Visual Cliff, and if there's any other bands that you were involved with prior to that that maybe didn't record.
Yeah, I mean, Visual Cliff was basically first once I came back from New York City. I had known Rick, when I left for New York City in '87. Um, kind of jammed with him a couple of times, just, friendly stuff, nothing serious. And then when I went to New York City, he went to Berkeley. A couple of years go by, I come back to the Pittsburgh area, um, run into him. I think it was at a King's X show. And, it's like, "Hey, Rick, what's going on?" Blah, blah, blah. And, kind of quick catch up. And he was teaching at a local guitar store. And I went down and saw him. And it was probably, I mean, a lot of years went by, a good 10 years. And, you know, before I ran into him. And I'm like, "Hey, I want to get something back together again." I kind of put it down for a while. Came back from New York City all burned out. Really didn't even want to play. I was there for the wrong reasons, and the Lord needed to kind of sift that out of me before kind of reigniting that passion again for the right path and the right motives. And then, hooked back up with Rick again, kind of picked our friendship back up where it left off. And we kind of officially have formed, the Visual Cliff Project in 2001. And then it turned into just Visual Cliff, and the 2003 album came out. Yeah, that very exploratory type music, no real sense of where it was going. 2004 got a little bit more refined with, Key to Eternity, and then that's from that transition to the Freedom Within albums where we really started finding our legs, and me as a writer and kind of the whole what we're doing here with mixing fusion and rock together and doing something interesting. But I wanted a singer,
Right.
and I couldn't find anybody locally. The one guy in the Pittsburgh area that everybody was like, "Oh, this guy," and I sat down and talked with him for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, "This dude's a Satanist. I can't be working
Uh-oh.
with him." I can talk to him about Jesus, but we ain't going to, like, we're not doing music together, brother.
Yeah.
So I just went on a search. And just hit review sites of progressive rock stuff that was out at that time. And I went through, man, 20 different bands, listening to their vocalists, and kind of, I'm like, "Nah, that's not going to be a fit. That's not going to be a fit." And then finally, I came across Orphan Project's first album, read the review of that, dialed up the music. I think I ordered a copy of it too. And I sat down, listened to it, and I'm like, I'm like, this dude is perfect. His tone, everything.
Yeah.
Um, so I got a hold of his email address and just introduced myself, said, hey, you don't know me from nobody, but this is who I am, what I am. Let's have a conversation about you guesting on 3 songs for, this next album I want to do. And then he ended up, Shane and him get back to me and he's like, yeah, I kind of heard about you through the first 2 albums and stuff like that. From the periphery, I kind of know who you guys are. And I said, well, I got 3 tunes, man. I said, let me send them to you. If you listen to them and hate them, we part as friends, no big deal. But if you feel like you're hearing something on them, I'd love for you to sing on them. So send them the 3 tunes that are on the Freedom Within album, and boom, the rest, like they say, is history. And we always, we started out our relationship, me and Shane, where Shane's like, "Oh, Orphan Project's my band," Orphan. I'm like, "Yeah, man, you're just guesting over here on Visual Cliff, man. You're just guesting." And then by the time we get to, the third album in, he was like, "Well, I guess I'm a member of your band." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you kind of are, brother." I said, "You're not leaving." So
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know I have the Orphan Project albums. I think they had a second, they had an EP in between, and then they had a
yep,
third one, but then that was it. I haven't seen anything else
yeah,
from them. So, but
yeah. So
yeah,
I dedicated myself to keeping Shane busy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. He's a great vocalist.
so yeah, great guy too. Great. Him and Wendy are awesome. Yeah, and so Fall of Echoes kind of, happened in between, a couple of Visual Cliff albums. The 2005 Freedom Within and the 2007 Into the After,
Right.
where, I got to meet, a couple of guys when I went and visited. Thought highly of, Bill Yost in Orphan Project as well. Good bass player, good singer. And I said, you know what, I want to do just an album where it's just rock songs, man. I'm not trying to be all crazy progressive and all that stuff. If there's elements in it, fine, whatever. But I just want to kind of showcase Shane's vocals and just straight up good rock tunes. And so, me and Rick, Shane and Bill, so it was kind of half work
Yeah.
from Project, half Visual Cliff, came together on that album, put it out. Now, we had every intention of doing another one, but it just kind of never happened.
Yeah.
But it was just more of a fun, like let's do something, let's just throw something new out there, have some
Yeah.
fun with it.
I love it. It's a great album.
Yeah, it turned out great. I mean, the ghost player on the album, in the keyboard, synth, piano side of the world was Tony Corelli.
Okay.
He works with Shane, and he owns the Deep End Recording Studio in Baltimore, Maryland. Um, he's taken off with a lot of success with what he's doing. If you haven't
Yeah.
tracked him and kind of kept up with what he's doing, he's having some really great success. He's a very talented producer, engineer. So
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
with that tandem, and coming back, and me getting perfectly great tracks to mix and work with, was just a blessing.
Yeah.
So Tony did all the work on that album. I tried to make him a member of the band. And he was like, "Man, if I do that with you, I got to do that with everybody." And I was like, "I get it.
Yeah.
We'll keep you hidden."
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, the first two Visual Cliff albums I just got because Bill and Bafford from Rock Productions, he has that Christian metal distro, and they were on there. So I snatched them up, and they're gone already. They're already sold out. Every whatever he had left of it's gone. So, so I think I have pretty much most of the visual clip that's available on CD. I know you did some other stuff that was streaming as well. That's out there as well. So,
That's cool. But then you can probably definitely hear the progression of my recording abilities. From basic stuff to more and more gear, and learning more and more as to how to do this thing the right way. But those early albums have a lot of energy in them, a lot of like wild ideas, just trying to pull off, which are kind of fun to go back and listen to. They're like looking at old photo albums and go like, man, that's how
right,
I used
right.
to look.
Yeah, I was gonna, that kind of segues into the next question. I was gonna ask you about how you create and record music because you're also a producer and engineer. You do mastering and mixing as well. So how did your interest in the technical side of music production start?
That's another crazy thing, man. It's just one of those things you don't realize you got an ability for until it's thrust upon you. So obviously, I didn't want to spend tons of money always going into studios and the production schedules and band schedules and all. I was like, man, yeah, I kind of fell into the DIY mode that everybody was kind of getting into, in the early 2000s. And I, you know, I was not a computer guy. Technology and me just weren't really good friends at that time. But Eric Fuller, the bass player in Visual Cliff, he was like a PC guru, build PC
Right.
guy. He was going into that for schooling and his career. And he's like, he goes, I'll build something for you. We'll get you cooking and we'll get some software. We'll figure it out. And that's just kind of how it started. Literally, my third bedroom of my house became Parkside Sound. And bought a really good sound card. Worked with a couple of guys from Sweetwater on like, hey, I want this simple. I want to be able to bang to bang to bang. Nothing crazy. And so, between all of that, they got me going. And then it was just a matter of, spending lots of hours trial and error in it and, realizing, hey, these things called plugins actually do help. Um, so learning all that, getting all that in, and it was just one escalation after another. And by the time I would say I hit freedom within, I had it pretty well dialed in as far as how to get sounds, capture sounds. Um, that album there, funny little story. Third bedroom was the studio. Well, all my cabling to my amps ran into the second bedroom
Oh,
or they were mic'd up. So I always had to give my wife fair warning on what Saturday was guitar day, because it was going to get loud and she was going to hear probably some parts about 150 times. And she would always plan something like, with her sister or my mother or her mother or whatever, get out of the house and just go get lost for 5 or 6 hours.
yeah.
So that was the humble beginnings of it. Eventually 2008, I went and got my own space in a nearby town. It's like a 3 room suite up on top, and a soundproofed stuff. Did a little bit of room in a room kind of a deal. Got a whisper room booth, and actually developed a commercial recording studio where I was recording bands.
Yeah.
And so that took me to another level of obviously when someone would come in and they would have an idea of what they would want sound wise, I had to figure it out, and make it happen. And so that
Yeah.
helped me as well to grow as an engineer and producer.
Well, I got to tell you, the sound is fantastic what you do because I'm kind of very I'm like an audiophile. I listen to my music when I'm at home. I actually have my realistic Mach 2 speakers that I got like in the end of the 90s, and I have like a whole separate component system. So when I put an album on there, whether it's a vinyl or a CD, I'm always listening to, is this going to sound the way it should sound? Because unfortunately, some of these modern CDs, when they master, they brick wall it. They make it like
Oh
there's
yeah,
no dynamic range, and I can't.
the
And
whole
literally, if it's
vapor
like,
trail syndrome.
yeah, yeah, I can't even listen to it. My ears actually hurt if I listen to something that's brick wall because all the dynamic range is stripped out of it, and it's like, why did you do that? So, but and that's probably in the cases of that where, because I grew up on vinyl records, but I kind of switched to CDs, but I have a kind of a mix of both now. But there's an example of where the vinyl's gonna sound better than the CD because the CD, even though it has a higher dB, if it's not mastered and mixed properly, it's not
Right.
going to sound good. So I
Yep. And there's a
really,
whole different way you master for vinyl than you do for CD
right.
that you got to really learn and whatnot. And I credit my Visual Cliff keyboardist Rob Clan with the whole mastering side of it.
Right.
Because 2004 I had Bob Katz master that album,
Yeah.
and and I know what I paid for that. and Rob was like, "Well, you just master it," and I'm like, "I don't know nothing about mastering. I'm lucky I'm learning how to put this stuff together and just mixing it."
Yeah.
He's like, "No, you can do it. You can do it." So he really encouraged me to kind of try that, and and then I did an A/B comparison on some stuff that I mastered next that I also had him do, and I was just looking, I'm like, all right, I guess I can do this too. So I just saved myself some more money. So I end
Yeah.
up getting into a lot of mastering for folks, and I still do that for producers and musicians around the world. I'll provide what it's called indie audio mastering that I do for those folks at a really nice price, so it doesn't break their banks. I'm not out here trying to make $1 million at it.
Right.
I just try to help people get really good sounds, and so that they can be proud of what they're putting out.
Yeah.
And do it at a price point that's that I think is fair.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
some of these guys charge ridiculous amounts of money for an album to master, and
Yeah.
it's completely unneeded.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, going along with that, you have a very good. I believe you have a very distinct guitar sound and tone that, like we talked about earlier, does borrow sometimes from Jeff Beck, other influences. But talk about the guitars you use to create your musical soundscapes.
I wish I can sit here and tell you like, yeah, I got this, 1959 Gibson, and I got this, $17,000 this guitar, that guitar. I'm a grunt. I use cheap stuff with good pickups. And I just believe, when you come across a good piece of wood, it's a good piece of wood, whether it's a Gibson or whatever.
Right.
Um, uh, my main guitars that I use for pretty much everything. I mean, there's a wall of six of them behind me. Two of them are the Agile brand guitars. Okay, if anybody out there doesn't know about Agile, through Rondo Music, back in the early 2000s, they were putting out stuff that rivaled Les Paul quality. Um, and I bought a couple of those and was completely blown away with the playability. They stayed in tune. They sounded amazing. And the only thing I did was, maybe put a DiMarzio in one, put a Tone Pro in another, and just kind of, monkeyed around a little bit with the pickup configurations to try to help me get a little bit better of where I wanted to head. I mean, I have a Strat, you know, uh, it's a Japanese Strat from 88 or 89. Love that guitar for all things that Strats do. And
Right.
my main baby is my Lemon Drop Vintage is the brand. My buddy Ralph, who you may see, kind of interacting with me on Facebook, he's a luthier and he does amazing work. And he gutted this thing and kind of rebuilt it with the specs of, a 59 Les Paul, and it's an incredible sounding guitar. The one album was it? I think it was Blue Syndrome 3. A lot of I had at that time, it would just kind of come into my mind now. Some guitar players were commenting on like, man, your solos had this jingly, jangly, cool vibe to them on that album. What was the guitars and what was your rig? And I just like, well, that guitar was a $180 SX guitar with Gibson Classic pickups in it.
Wow.
And I wrapped the strings over the bridge instead of through. And
Right.
that little thing right there did something crazy to that guitar.
Gave it a sound.
And I'll never trade that $180 piece of junk in for anything.
Yeah.
It just gives me kind of a, but like, you've seen the articles and you've seen the videos where, somebody comes into, you know, Steve Vai's or Eddie Van Halen's studio and they pick up the guitar and they don't sound like Eddie Van Halen or Steve Vai. They sound
Right.
like them. And then, it's a lot of that's in the fingers, man. It's how you
Yeah.
attack, it's the pressures, it's the way you pick and get harmonics and how all the pressures of all that stuff. Everything interacts with that wood and metal to your body and your energy and what you're bringing to it that gives you your tone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything else is, complementary to that, really.
Yeah. Yeah. How about acoustic guitars? Because I know you do acoustic guitars as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a nylon string, no name. She would probably surmise by now that I bought for 150 bucks off of Rick. And I have a 1976 Epiphone acoustic guitar
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
that I'll do sound hole miking and pickups and stuff like that for that. And that's got a really good old wood tone to it.
Yeah.
The fretting could be probably redone. It's got some grooves in it from just a million years of playing on it, but that's another really good guitar. I did have a 414 for a while, but ended up needing money for other gear, so I sold that. That was like probably one of the nicer acoustics I've ever owned.
Yeah.
But it didn't sound recording it any better than my cheapy Epiphone.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, I'm
amazing
a,
how.
I'm a weird duck, man. I don't like, I don't
Yeah.
spend money on stuff like that. If I've got $8,000, give me 500 bucks for a guitar, and I'm putting the rest, somewhere to good use. I just can't spend that kind of money on a guitar. I just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't belabor anybody else that does that if they want to. God bless them, but I
Yeah.
just can't.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the first guitar I ever had, because I played the guitar a little bit too, from a lot of years, but I think it was a Seagull, which was like a guitar that they said was the most popular guitar being sold at that time, but it was a no-name brand. I think it was, and it was cheap. It was like, I don't
Mhm.
know, $200-300. And that's how I learned the guitar in that. It wasn't anything fancy. I did go on to because I'm more of an acoustic guitar player. I was in electric for a while. I had a what was it? I had a Fender Mustang. I had a Fender Mustang guitar.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Yeah, I had that as electric when I was in that phase, and but now I have like a Takamine
Oh
acoustic
yeah,
electric.
those are
So that
beautiful.
sounds good, but also not like over the top expensive. They're affordable and they sound good. That's the
Yeah.
key.
I have
Like
a
you said.
different opinion about acoustics as far as money you have to spend to get, because there is some obviously, better woods, better construction, and the
Right.
whole nine yards by. But electrics, I think there's like three categories. There's your $100 to $300 level of guitar. But when you get into that five, six, seven, $800 level, I don't think
Right.
there's. I think you're splitting hairs once you get past 800 to $1,000.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you get into the 3,000, $4,000, $5,000 guitar range, I think you're splitting hairs on the quality of what you're
Right.
playing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's more
Exactly.
the brand name.
Yeah. That's what you're paying for. Probably
You're
most
gonna you're
likely
gonna
the
get all
brand name.
kind of feedback on this video, like that guy doesn't know crap.
So I wanted to also talk about how you often support organizations with some of your releases, such as benefiting the Loving the Lost Boys ministry with the Visual Cliff Refuge album, and benefiting the Children's Hunger Fund with the new Shockwire Saints EP, and you also did with your Rob Perez music EPs and full length ones too. So how do you go about choosing the organizations you like to support?
Loving the Lost Boys was, we'll start with that one first. That was Shane Langford's situation with his wife Wendy. They would literally bring in young men that were timing out of the system, and give them a home, and would take care of them and give them direction into the next phase of their life. So they did that for a while. They're involved in other things as well. So that kind of hit a little closer to home, just from being in close proximity to that story and seeing what they went through. And so when we were putting together the Refuge album, all of that was in my head as far as a concept and the visuals and the back, the album visual with the young man, looking down, but you can see his shadow of strength behind him,
Yeah,
and I just said, let's do something, Shane, and let this benefit what you guys are doing, and put it towards that. So he was obviously, pretty stoked about that we did that. Um, for the longest time, I've always supported, the Children's Hunger Fund, Feeding America. They have a great food bank network, to help feed people, and Charity Watch gives them high ratings of using, just almost
right,
every penny of every dollar and that's the big thing for me. I don't want to pay for some CEO salary. I want to pay to feed people, you know.
right, exactly.
So those have been great folks to hook up with, and it's I've always just I've always been convicted might be a strong word, but just have a heart for um, just people that need fed, and physically, spiritually.
Right.
God has always been good to me and my wife and my home, and I've never known want in that regard, and I praise Him for that. And the piece of scripture that's like, what you do unto the least of these, you do unto me, and
Right. Right.
that that hit me hard very young in life. To honor that, when the Lord says something like that,
Yeah.
you better listen.
Yeah. It's
Because
important.
there's always, a better, a bigger blessing coming back your way from that obedience, and to honor those words. So that's
Yeah.
just important to me.
Yeah, like when he told the apostles, the poor you always have with you. So he was also saying, you need to take care of them. They're always going to be
Yeah.
there. You need to, take care of them
Not,
as
not
well.
not everybody has the same tools to work with in this world.
Right.
Sometimes it catches up to them and they catch bad breaks. Could
Yep.
be health, could be whatever. We just got to be mindful of looking out for those people, and throw them on our backs. When we can carry them ourselves, because you never know when it's going to be your turn to be carried.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So let's shift back to the band. So I wanted to talk to you or have you talk about how you got involved with the EchoVerse band.
I basically told Doug that if I'm not in that band, I'm never going to be his friend again. No, I'm just kidding. Um, so I've been working with Doug forever. He's
Yeah.
guested on a lot of my tunes.
Yeah.
Very blessed by that. I've been blessed to guest on his tunes. I guess after all these years, he still digs my guitar soloing, so to put it on his stuff. And he and another fella from Florida put together a project, and Doug reached out to me, and Doug was going to be mainly the singer on it, and I said, yeah, let's work together. That's cool. We always kind of come up with cool stuff together. And then one thing led to another. The longtime supporter of Visual Cliff stuff, Jason Graves, out of Virginia. Just in conversations back and forth with him over the years, he's like, I got a younger brother that sings. Let me turn you on to some of his YouTube videos. So I kind of had that. I had KG in the back of my mind to
Right.
work on some of my own personal stuff. I had a couple of tunes that didn't make any other albums, and I was like, maybe I'll throw them at your brother, see if he likes them. That led to that conversation, which then led to Doug saying, I really don't want to sing on this stuff. We need to find a singer, and I'm like, I might have a guy. So it kind of bloomed into that. So I guess I'm a sort of founding member of EchoVerse, and then recruited KG into it, and then KG brought in Kyle for drums, and then it's now who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So have you ever done any touring with any of the music that you've created?
The very first version of Visual Cliff had members in New York City doing, and nobody will ever hear these songs because they're horrible. Um, it was the very first recording I ever did, actually, that was under that brand name, and that that version of it played 4 or 5 dates
Okay.
in New York City before I went on to other bands. But yeah, that's it, man. We nothing since my New York City days, where the bands I was in and playing gigs and little East Coast swing tour with one of them, where I realized after that I hate touring. I'll never want to do this ever again in my life.
Yeah.
It just did not gel with me. All the visions of what you think it is, and all the rock and roll dreams, and oh, this is cool. I can't wait to tear apart my first hotel room. It
Yeah.
just went out the window. I was like, this sucks. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I went back into just being a studio guy in New York City, playing on a lot of people's stuff and kind of getting slowly introduced to a little bit of engineering. And then that's when the Lord started working on me to, like, hey, you're here for all the wrong reasons. You came here for all the wrong reasons. You know, you're burned out on this. This is not going anywhere for you. Go back home. And that's when I kind of went back home, regrouped, put the guitar down for a few years.
Yeah.
I kind of went back into being a sporto and, was playing semi-pro baseball for 2 or 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of just doing that and getting married and working and starting business stuff. And then, like I said, about 1999, 2000 is when, I started getting the call. I mean, every once in a while I'd pick up the guitar just to kind of, play Eruption or something, impress my wife, and just put it back down again. Nothing crazy. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so once I started dedicating it toward the Lord, everything I just watched him grab hold of it,
Right.
and I just sat back in marvel at it all. I mean, I'm just some punk from Canonsburg, south of Pittsburgh, putting out tunes, and all of a sudden, I'm in Best Buy in Circuit City with Freedom Within. How did this happen? I don't even
Yeah.
know. So it's all a God thing.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about some of the songs in your musical catalog. You can, discuss any aspects of the composition of the songs, whether the music, any anecdotes that maybe you have with them. So let's start with Fall of Echoes, Mr. Orion from Red Tree.
Yeah, that was a cool song. It was kind of inspired when I initially started writing it, and it started kind of coming out. Was like, this is kind of like Wings, where he would do one section and would go into another section. It didn't make sense with the first section, but it kind of did towards the end. And it was like it started kind of taking on that motif. And that band mix, Rick is a crazy talented musician, drummer bass guy, and he's also a really good guitar player. So I'm like, dude, you haven't done anything, since like '91, on guitar in an official capacity. Let's kind of share some, guitar soloing duties on this album. So he laid down some solos on some of the tunes, so it was kind of fun to work with him on that. Shane, um, I'm not a lyricist. I may come up with a turn of a phrase or a couple of things that might head a direction and conceptually into something, but I'm not a lyricist. And Shane came back after getting like kind of the finished tune to start working with. He's like, "Hey, I got an idea for." Like, we marvel at the sky, we look at the celestial bodies and all that stuff, and we feel small, but there's somebody watching them. There's somebody more powerful that created them over it all. And he came up with the whole concept of Mr. Orion, so that turned out pretty cool.
Yeah, and another one from that album, Little Girl Lost, is another really strong one on there.
Yeah, man, that's an emotional one for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I that was kind of my concept based off of some personal experience with some a young woman or two that I ended up ministering to that was dealing with trauma from their childhood, and it was coming out later in life and messing them up a little bit, and just kind of walking that path with them to reclaim their sense of self, their sense of security in the world, and value. That was a tough one. I can't listen to that song very often because I just think of them and I kind of weep again for their situation. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a,
like Shane, we need to address how the Lord would talk to a young woman that went through some bad stuff about her value, and
right, right.
sharing in the pain, tie you to my side. I have your soul. I mean, all these things, I'm coming for you. I'll be right there. That was that whole thing. So I wrote maybe one verse of it, of things that I definitely wanted Shane to say. I mean, he reworded it and kind of made it better, but he then ran with the whole concept of that to come up with that song.
Yeah,
And
very
that,
powerful.
I mean, again, Tony being the ghost guy on the album. I mean, those first two piano notes, just like, ugh. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like here we go. It's a powerful tune, man. But I'm glad we did
yeah,
it.
yeah. Very, very emotional. Very, it really touched me, when I hear it, every time I hear that. How about Sacred from the Visual Clip Freedom Within album?
Yeah, that's the first one that I sent to Shane to take a look at. And I had no idea this is the other thing as far as my process goes. I love just sending a finished piece of music to somebody and not knowing what I'm getting back, whether it's from EchoVerse, or whether it's from, hearing the bass tracks for the first time from Jamie and Shockwire Saints, or John's keyboard tracks, or anything that anybody that I'm working with. It's like I always love getting back and being surprised at, like, man, I would have never thought of that. Oh, that's really cool. Lord really led this thing, and it, instead of me kind of saying I want the X, Y, Z and kind of spoon feed, the whole thing to everybody. I hate doing that. So when Shane came back and I started mixing in the vocals and all that, I was like, oh my gosh. And I started asking him, and obviously he knew what the process was from Tony. I said, that section, man, where are you layering your voices and doing all kind of weird talking, in that one, bridge section? And he starts laughing. He goes, no, he goes, that's actually audio off a family videotape from Tony's party. A
Oh,
family
wow.
party or something, and all the the stuff going off in that video, from his family talking, and all around each other. And I guess there was probably 30 or 40 people in this party or whatever. And he just took that audio off of that videotape and did all kind of crazy stuff to it, and time shifted and blah 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 or whatever, made it seem like there was like a bazillion voices. And that's where that came from. So yeah, kind of cool little anecdote there for that song. But that was all Shane, as far as the message behind,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
nothing sacred anymore.
Right. Right. How about Into Your Embrace from Into the After?
Yeah, that was all Shane. He came back to me with like a concept of, hey, we're all sinners. We all mess up. And he wanted to come at a concept of somebody just being embarrassed in front of the Lord, knowing they're going to mess up, or they're about to mess up or whatever. And, they fall to that sin nature and whatever it is. And how you would just want to tell the Lord, don't look at me, just turn for me, kind of
Yeah.
a thing. And then Shane's famous, in his typical motive of writing. And I love this about him, is like he'll deal with all the tough stuff at first and the hard hitting stuff into hope. He always has that swing in his lyrics, to get into a hope stage, and a resolve stage or whatever. And so that song's a very indicative of that, where deal with the tough stuff. Don't look at me. I'm just, a self-crowned king with no kingdom, whatever. And, I
Right.
play in
Right.
the dirt. Yeah. I mean, Shane gets real. And then he's like, but I'm going to fall into your embrace. You're going to pick me back up. I'm still the one you call son, so
Yeah.
that was a great concept. I love that song.
Yeah. It reminds me of of the Apostle Peter. Like when he saw the glory of God, he was like, "I'm a sinful man." You
Yeah.
recognize that. But
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
God still, treats you as his son.
Yep.
Through
Yep.
it all. So, how about turning of the gears from Collective Spirit?
Yeah, new band lineup for that album. Some things fell out of place that needed to kind of fall into place for that album with other guys. Notably, Mike Florio on keys. Mike's great keyboardist, and singer. He came on board for that album. And turning of the gears, me and Shane kind of, I guess, had a little mind meld on that, where it's like, let's just talk about like time going by, and there's nothing you could do about it. It just keeps marching on, and how we need to respond to that,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
believers, and the blessed hope of where we're headed.
Right. Exactly. How about hashtag hero from Refuge?
That was all Shane.
Is that
He wanted to poke fun at the hashtag
yeah.
crowd. Hey, look at me and all my altruism.
Yeah.
Hashtag, ain't I awesome? Um, you know, and I just said, I love it. Run with it. I think it can be kind of cool. Just as a way to, just kind of body check ourselves a little bit on that front. I get I try to be a little sensitive even on that when I'm putting out like, hey, thanks for the support, everybody. We just fed over 3,000 people with it. I mean, that's not to lift me up. I
Right.
mean, that's to lift the blessing of everybody that supported this thing. We're all part of that mission. It's not, I'm nothing great about it. I'm just a conduit musically for everybody else to kind of get behind, to bless people for feeding them. So
Right.
even with that, when I post that, I always kind of like I get that twinge, or it's like, am I saying this the right way? So it's not about me, and I try to check myself on that. So I think that's where the hashtag hero stuff for Shane came in.
Well, it's interesting how if you when I grew up, that was called the pound symbol on the telephone. People don't even know
Right.
that. It's like that's
Mhm.
not even talked about it anymore, really. How about I'll follow you from the Map album, Where We Are to Where We Will Be. That one, I have to tell you, that sounds like a hit single to me. I hear that, and it's just like one of those songs like that should have been a huge hit on the radio. It's just an incredible melody and just an incredible song.
Wow. Yeah, that shows me you kind of went deep into the catalog, man. You're pulling out "I'll Follow You," the last thing on that album. So yeah, the Map album was me, Rick, and Tim Amos on vocals. Tim lives like 5 minutes from me down the road, kind of a thing, and he's got a real great tone, soulful rock. I mean, he can dirty it up and he can be beautiful all in the same sentence. I mean, it's just he's got a lot of talent. Hopefully, I'll be working with him again next year on something special that might be announced next year. But yeah, that came together. Again, most of the lyrics with that were all Tim. He's another blessed lyricist, melody guy, and he can come up with some cool stuff. But that Map album, I wanted that to be kind of like my quadrophenia a little bit, in the sense of there's a booklet that follows each song,
Yeah,
and it's a story of the traveler and his experiences, in coming to Christ. And obviously, that being the last song, "I'll Follow You," is him making the decision in the church that he ended up in, per the
yeah,
story in the booklet. And I asked him, I said, would you be okay with me voicing the last line of that song? And he was like, yeah, absolutely, brother. And so that's actually me saying, "I'll follow you, Lord." Is that you? Is that you, Lord? Um,
interesting.
yeah, it was just kind of something I felt called to want to do. Is to a personal thing with me and the Lord. But yeah, that album did very well. We sold out of it twice, and I loved getting the booklet out there because it was like I think it was a cool story. I think
Yeah,
Tim did a fantastic job with each song, because I mean the tough thing for him, I was like, okay, so now we're at this second song. This second song, you have to sing about this because this is the story.
right, right,
So he had to kind of, the story didn't come from his lyrics. The lyrics came from the storyline that he had to obviously follow to make it, logical.
right.
But he did a fantastic job. And the beats that you're hearing on "I'll Follow You," I wanted that to kind of be not 100% in time. If you notice, it's kind of a little bit maybe ahead or a little bit behind. I wanted it to be more like a heartbeat,
Yeah, yeah.
um, kind of a vibe, if that even came across. But that's me actually with a microphone inside the whisper room booth hitting the wall.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Wow.
Yeah, so I captured that and did some things production wise with it, to try to make that happen, and pull off that idea.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think the version I have it on CD, but I think I just have the cardboard sleeve version of it. Did you
I
say
got
it
to get
had
you.
it?
Yeah, I got to get you the booklet.
Yeah, yeah, because now that you're talking about the storyline, I'd love to be able to follow it along with it from beginning to end that way. How about the recent EchoVerse Mary Did You Know cover that you guys did for the Christmas that Rocks compilation?
I had no input on that at all. The boys ran with that idea. I
Yeah,
think Bill was talking with Kyle about getting something together for that Christmas compilation, and I got a thing in our group text chat. Doug was like, "Hey Rob, I'm going to send you a tune. I need you to put a guitar solo here and here. We're doing a Christmas song." I'm like, "Cool."
It sounds great.
But
I mean, that's a song I absolutely love. Um, and I love the version, not, I mean, of course, the guy that wrote it was Mark Lowry, the Christian comedian, but the version by Michael English always just like blesses me so much the way he sings it. But you guys put this kind of progressive rock spin on it that just really like gives it another dimension. I think it really,
Yeah, KG crushed it. Those guys did a fantastic job musically. Musically it was all them, and like I said, I just got to come in and like a privileged guitar player, rock star guy, and just like, all right, where do you want the solo? I
yeah,
really I had nothing to do with it other than just that. But yeah, it turned out really cool.
yeah, yeah. So what's ahead for you musically?
I don't know, man. I just wherever God leads it. Like I said, there might be something new, special coming out next year. We're in the very beginning stages of seeing where it goes. That's all I can say at this point,
Yeah,
because of who's involved. But Tim Amos would be involved as the singer in it. Something next year. I don't know, even have a clue as to how many tunes it's going to be. It might just be a quick EP. I don't know. But we in the bag already. There's enough riffs in our folder and stuff between me and Doug for two more EV albums. But we're gonna do some new stuff for the third album that's gonna kind of even be another level of up in the game kind of stuff and getting creative with some things. But that's pretty much it right now that I can see on the
yeah.
horizon.
So will we see the another EchoVerse album in 2026, you think?
Yeah, like I said, the second album is in the I would say it's in the bag.
Okay.
A minor tweak here or there. Like I said, I listened to all seven tunes this morning. That Doug shipped off to us last night to check out. I was completely body slammed by every one of them. They
Wow.
sounded amazing. All of us are gelling as musicians together on a level that I'm very blessed to be a part of. And once this comes out, it will probably be the early part of 2026 for this second album. And then, yeah, like I said, we already got tons of material in the bag to start working on as far as ideas and riffs from me, stuff from Doug, and whatnot to even probably have a third album pretty much ready to start working on as far as pieces and parts. But we'll see where that goes. So.
Awesome. So you may have like touched upon this earlier, but maybe crystallize it more. So what do you believe is your ultimate purpose in recording music?
I on my Facebook page, it just simply says a musician to the king. That's every
Absolutely.
album that I put out, John. I'm like, I look up and I go, is that it? Because I've been, this is like album number 23, 24. Um, I never thought back in 2000 that I would be sitting here talking to you about being a part of a catalog of 20 some albums and EPs and all that kind of stuff. I never would
Yeah,
have thought I had that in me at all. Um, I would have retired off of Freedom Within for crying out loud. I was like, all right, that's good, done. But it just seems like every time I think I'm tapped, I mean, it's like I need like a 2 or 3 week recharge, and then boom. I mean, I get another blast of like all these ideas, and I just start recording them, and start throwing them, now at Doug and saying, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And he's like, "Oh, I hear something to that too." And we come together on, and create something even better with it. So, yeah, I mean, unless something, happens and I get my fingers chopped off or, or I
God forbid.
literally just don't think of anything anymore. And it's clear that God's like, all right, I'm kind of done with the music thing with you now. You got to go do something else. I'll just kind of keep at it. And then the big thing for me, that I'm very blessed in, and it's something that is important to me, is to not duplicate myself. I don't want to be, and hopefully I'm not doing it. If I hear something that even remotely sounds like something I've already done, I discard it and I throw it away. Even though it might be a slightly cool, different version of it, but it's too similar. It's too of that ilk.
Right.
So, as long as I'm being creative and as long as he's feeding me interesting things that are new and fresh, I'm
Yeah.
always challenging myself to play better and expand my palette as a player, and not just kind of fall into the same runs and the same, scale patterns and all that kind of a deal. As long as I'm not falling to that, I'll keep going, until I
Yeah.
just physically can't anymore.
Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about the Shockwire Saints album that just came out this year? Like what was the impetus behind that and the name and everything?
Yeah, I mean, Shockwire Saints it's one of those things that you're driving along and you just start saying names of things and you just
Yeah.
start trying combinations of names. And, just it was out of the blue. It was like Shockwire Saints. I was just like, whoa, that's a cool name for a band. I got to write some music now because that's a cool name. But I've always, thought very highly of Jamie Millard's bass playing. Dude's crazy talented. I mean, he could be Jocko in one statement and then Thunder Fingers Entwistle in the next. I mean, and then he could do fretless like Tony Franklin. I mean, the dude is just incredible. And I've worked with him in the past on stuff, and he was on one of the Visual Cliff albums, 2013. So I always had appreciation for his abilities. You know, John, he's been in Visual Cliff for a number of albums, and he's done a lot of stuff with us on the side of my side projects, Exit Strategy and others, my RPM stuff. And Mike Adams, I've never played with before, but I know of him as a drummer from Vertical Alignment, and I think Doug's worked with him on a couple other things. So I've always appreciated his abilities, and just some hit me, and the Lord just said, reach out to Mike. That's kind of where it started. You got
Yeah.
some of these crazy fusion Beck type tunes. Um, throw it out to Mike and work with somebody different. And
Yeah.
just see what
Yeah.
see where it goes. So Mike dug the music. Jamie hopped on. John hopped on. So we had some fun with that. And what drove the production style to it immediately hit me once I got Mike's tracks back is the way he mics his drums and kind of the room that he's in just had a real live feel.
Yeah.
It didn't have that overproduced, suck the air out of everything. Everything is too clinical and clean. There was a lot of dirt on Mike's floor that I loved. Yeah, so I just ran with that and just kind of put together more of a real cool live, spontaneity type of approach to mixing and whatnot, and kept it really organic. And the tunes just kind of came out, in that same vein. So I just kind of ran with it. Thought I was only going to do one or two tunes. Turned into what it turned into. Just kind of
Yeah.
kept getting fed. Yeah, hey guys, I got one more. Sorry, you want to do another one? Yeah, sure. I think that's it. And then 2 weeks later, hey, I got another one. So we just kept it rolling. And Harrison Schuster, who's been a long time supporter of Visual Cliff, and he's been along the ride with me, and for the last 20 some years. Good friend and brother from Canada. Never met him personally. He's one of those internet, blessings that you have that you can call a friend because just of the history and whatnot and the back and forth of personal contact. He wanted to be the executive sole producer for Shockwire Saints, so he funded the physical copies to be made, got behind it, and wanted to be a part of blessing folks through the support of that, and helping that get put out there in a really cool way.
Yeah.
The vinyl, since the main songs are 6 songs. The other idea that hit me for the vinyl release would be, why not press that vinyl record in 45 RPM instead of 33 and a third?
Right.
There'll be 3 tunes per side. grooves will be wider, bigger, a lot more
Yep.
dynamic. I thought that would be a unique little twist for a
Yeah.
vinyl release.
Yeah, definitely.
And he was all for that as well, to get behind it. So yeah, should be the vinyl should be in hand for anybody listening, hearing this that bought it. I should be getting them between mid-December and January 13th.
Yeah.
So
Mm,
they'll go out the door ASAP as soon as I get them.
awesome. So any
So
final comments?
there'll
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
be another Shockwire Saints
Oh, I was going to
auction.
ask that. Yeah, I was going to ask that if you think there
Yeah.
would be a follow-up. So that's good. Yeah, because it's like you said, it's like a jazz fusion kind of Beckish type thing. So I think it shows like another side of your guitar playing and
Yeah, hopefully the
very
five by
enjoyable.
seven card kind of puts a visual,
Yeah, yeah,
thing in your mind when you're listening to it, because that's the visual that I kind of saw in my head.
yeah,
Is like, this is kind of what it would look like if I was listening to this band right now, listening to what I'm hearing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's awesome.
But
Um,
anytime I get compared to Jeff Beck, I'm 100%
yeah,
humbled
you're happy.
and thankful.
Yeah. So any final comments you'd like to make or to add
Just
anything?
I just yeah, I'm just thankful for the platform to talk about what the Lord's blessed me with you, and all the the help you give this community, and all the support that we get as musicians. That we all want to feel validated in our art. That's just the nature of an artist. They want to see the smiles. They want to see, we want to see and hear about the tangible reactions to what we put out as art. So any chance and any time that we're blessed to feel that from somebody, and then when that somebody ties it to the one that gave it to us, our Heavenly Father, I mean, that's just I think there's no better way to live a life, in my opinion. Everything else is just rings hollow.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
so we're very blessed by that. I'm very blessed by that. So everybody that's supported anything I'm involved in, any of the other bands, or the offshoot bands from what those guys do. Doug got a lot of solo stuff out there. And Shane's got his Orphan Project stuff out there. There's just so much to tap into that's really worth it.
yeah.
Um,
That in fact, what it is I'm going to probably get this right. Is it KBD3? I think it is.
yeah.
Is that what? Yeah, yeah. So that I'm really enjoying the fifth that he just came out with this year too, and your
Yeah.
guitar work on there as well. The solos and stuff. I think
It's
some good
great
stuff.
material, man.
Yeah, really good stuff. So, all right. So we'll say goodbye to the audience. You can hang out for a second afterwards. So I'll just close it out. So as always, I encourage everyone that is watching this to follow the light that shines out of the darkness. God bless everyone.
Amen.